Verse 694. And this verse is obviously spoken by Mahamati to the Buddha. Tell me the right view that goes with skillful means, original vows, etc. How does the society of the Holy Ones come into existence when all things are not? You get the impression that Mahamati is a monk. He's a monk. He's taken vows. He's undertaken to commit himself to various practices. He's taken refuge in the Buddha, in the teachings of the Buddha, and in what's described here as the society of the Holy Ones. This is the Sangha, the community of monks. And the Buddha, the teaching of the Buddha and the Sangha are known as the three jewels. This is what the Buddhist takes refuge in. This becomes the centre of the Buddhist's life. The three jewels. When somebody gets ordained into the Sangha, they go through a formal procedure whereby they take refuge in the three jewels. Now, it's not simply an automatic process, although with the passing of years and the establishment of traditions, it's very easy for it to become a process, an automatic process. You do step one, then you do step two, and step three, and so on. You adopt a spiritual lifestyle. But Mahamati's realised that this is not enough. It isn't about just getting on with certain behaviour, getting on with practicing certain techniques. There's a particular understanding which needs to be established before any of this is of any consequence. So this is what Mahamati is asking. Tell me the right view. This is the correct understanding that goes with meaningful practice. So really what Mahamati wants is to move from having a spiritual lifestyle to being a spiritual practitioner, or in the context of these videos, what I refer to as an enlightenment practitioner. Enlightenment is a practice. Enlightenment is actually what is referred to here as the right view that goes with skillful means. Now, in recent verses, this right view that goes with skillful means has been expressed in terms of no birth. No birth. This is to do with how we regard the world. We learn to regard the world as like a mirage. A mirage does not have a birth in terms of its own frame of reference. If you see an oasis and it's a mirage, then all the factors of that oasis arose spontaneously. They did not have a birth, a consequence in terms of geological forces or whatever. And it's the same with the world. When we apply the understanding of no birth to the world, then we're regarding it as a mirage. It comes into being spontaneously, not in terms of the forces which conventional understanding attributes to its existence. So, the problem for Mahamati, a Buddhist monk, he singled out certain factors of this existence which are important. For example, the Sangha. are they also part of this no birth? Because this is something which is important. It's a part of the world which the Buddhist monk focuses on and regards as important. The Buddha obviously is more than his physical body. What's important is the teaching, and the teaching is obviously not about the world. So the first two of the three jewels, it's not a concern. But the Sangha is there, embodied in human beings. Does the understanding of no birth also apply to them? Now you might be wondering, well, what's the significance of this? If you regard yourself as a spiritual person, you'll have certain sensibilities. And you'll feel quite strongly about them. You might not like certain things in the world. You might be for alternative energy sources, against fracking, against big companies, against cruelty to animals, against pollution, all the rest of it. And you get quite fired up about this. You know, you've got a spiritual agenda, and your spiritual agenda is very much about looking after Mother Earth and all this kind of thing. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking this. You know, this is something you can carry on getting on with. But what we have to look at is our own sensibilities, our own understanding. Because our own sensibilities, our own understanding, is also a symptom of what is referred to in the text as the habit energy, and what I refer to as the habit energy of our moods. I use the term moods in a rather all-encompassing sense. It also includes our sensibilities, the things that press our buttons, the things that get us worked up, and get us indignant, and get us passionate about things. All this fuels a particular worldview. We're taking our cue from the world once again, and we're therefore limiting consciousness's capacity for appreciating the fullness of its own reality. So this is a consequence, this is the implication of the teaching of no birth. We have to let go of all these notions that are precious to us. We have to let go of all these notions that we identify with. We still work in the world. We're still doing things. We're not going to disappear into some quiescent huddle in the corner. On the contrary, we can actually act with greater clarity and with greater efficacy in the world. But at the same time, we want to become more free. We want to become liberated. Well, it's consciousness that wants to become liberated and become established once again in its own nature, which has got nothing to do with the world, and it's got nothing to do with you and me. This is the implication of the teaching of no birth. And here, Muhammad is having to let go of one of the precious three jewels that he's taken refuge in, the company of the holy ones. So let's have a look at the Buddha's reply. Verse 695. By separating oneself from the dualism of perceived and perceiving, there is neither evolution nor cessation. The mind is born as views are cherished as regards one existence or another. So this is another statement of the understanding of no birth. We separate ourselves from the dualism of perceived and perceiving. What is perceived is the world. The dualism is actually between the perceived and the perceiver, but there's a relationship between the two called the perceiving. So we drop all three actually. We drop the perceived, which is the world, we drop the perceiver, which is a notion of me, and we drop this whole process, this whole dynamic between the perceived and the perceiver. It's this dynamic which fuels our sensibilities, which drives our moods, which reinforces limitations on consciousness. So we separate ourselves from this dualism. It's really consciousness separating itself from this dualism. There is neither evolution nor cessation. In other words, our sensibilities are concerned with changing things or stopping things. So we do not allow such notions to fuel our sensibilities, because all this is to do with views which fuel the mind. The mind is the great filter to true experiencing. The mind is born as views are cherished as regards one existence or another. Now I think the Buddha might be referring here to the sort of existences you might get born into after this one. One of the 5 or 6 realms, and very often this is what Buddhists settle for. They get on with their spiritual practice in order to have a good rebirth. But this has got nothing to do with enlightenment practice. I think on our practical level, we can just take one existence or another as the idea that the grass is always greener. We're always wanting something better than what we've got. We want to make the world a better place. We want to make our living space better. We're always striving to change things, to improve things for the better. Again, there's nothing wrong with this in itself, but when we allow it to fuel our sensibilities, then we're actually limiting our capacity for, well, infinite happiness. We might be mildly happy for a while when we can change things to our own liking, but that's to do with appeasing our sensibilities. We get what we want and we're happy for a while until we project our dissatisfaction onto something else. So this capacity for infinite happiness isn't about just getting into a good mood. Well, it's not about getting into a good mood at all. It's not about having our sensibilities satisfied, because that's what a good mood is. When our sensibilities are satisfied, it doesn't last. So I've started talking about infinite happiness because this is something else altogether. This is the potential of consciousness to be happy no matter what is going on. It is established in its own nature. And having established itself once again in its own nature, it isn't a passive thing. It is then possible to consciously generate and to explore the capacity for infinite happiness. So the answer to Muhammad's question is this taking refuge in the 3 jewels is a provisional thing. what we really take refuge in is enlightenment itself.